crush your enemies.
They drew first blood, not me.
See them driven before you.
Oh, my user.
And hear the lamentation of your women.
But I pity the fool.
Glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate.
Phone home.
They're here.
Oh, real light sleeper, child.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, released May 21st, 1982. It was written by Carl Reiner, George Gipe, and Steve Martin, directed by Carl Reiner, and technically George Cukor, Frank Tuttle, Anatoly Litvak, Billy Wilder, Robert Siodmak, Howard Hawks, Nicholas Ray, Alfred Hitchcock, Stuart Heisler, Irving Rapper, Mervyn LeRoy, Tay Garnett, Byron Haskin, Raoul Walsh, Jean Negulesco, Delmer Daves, Robert Z. Leonard, and Vincent Minnelli, uncredited, and released by Universal Pictures, with clips from films released by MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Columbia, and RKO. In the summer of 1980, Steve Martin had lunch with fellow screenwriters Carl Reiner and George Gipe to get notes on a 1930s period screenplay he'd written called Depression, and the three got distracted, spitballing how they might recycle footage from older films into a new story, allowing Martin to star in the lead, acting seamlessly opposite the stars of Hollywood's golden age, with the working title The Three Faces of Steve, presumably as a reference to 1964's Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, and later briefly Suck the Bullet, on the way to its release title, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. Seems like Martin was kind of typecasting himself because he shot this right on the heels of Pennies from Heaven while at the same time polishing his own script about the Great Depression. The final cut of what became Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid includes footage from 19 films across the Universal, Warner, MGM, RKO, Paramount, and Columbia catalogs, and combines them with original footage by way of basic editing, faked over-the-shoulder inserts, and even a few rear projection moments. The film's print campaign would jokingly refer to the process with the tagline, "Filmed in Detecto-Vision." Next season, we'll see a similar process employed by Woody Allen in Zelig. Martin was keen to appear opposite some of his comedic heroes from the time, but Reiner tried to focus on the more serious stars to serve as a consistent backboard for Martin's comedy. Reiner and Gipe took existing lines from the source material and reworked it to fit an original story, and Martin did a pass at the end to punch up the comedic moments. Martin has said he specifically avoided watching the classic noirs during production because he didn't want to accidentally impersonate the style of an existing character, but instead establish a new detective that fit into the same framework with the others.
I mean, he just feels like himself in this movie.
He does, yeah. To complete the illusion, the film reached back to the crews of the era, employing legendary costume designer Edith Head, accomplished production designer John DeCour, and even composer Miklos Rozsa, who even scored some of the films they recycled and was technically rescoring the same footage 40-ish years later. They even sought out period-accurate sound stages, building new sets to match the old ones at Laird International Studios in Culver City, which also hosted some of the original productions recycled into this one. On a budget of $9 million, the film made double that, 18.2 back. We open with the classic silver ball and stars Universal logo from the 40s. We've seen it at least twice so far, once in our Patreon review of The Sting, and again in 1982's Zoot Suit. We fade into a matte painting of a 40s city skyline. Rain begins to pour in the foreground as opening credits play out. Lightning flashes across the sky, and in a heavy rainstorm, we see a car racing down a flooded dirt road in the woods. This footage comes from George Cukor's 1942 film Keeper of the Flame, which is the only uncredited film of the 19 we'll get clips from. Skidding around a blind corner, we see the car go sailing off a cliff and dissolve to a Los Angeles Express newspaper headline announcing John Hay Forrest killed in accident. Noted scientist and philanthropist, was also cheesemaker and father of three. In the original film Keeper of the Flame, the dead driver here is named Robert Forrest and is described in the papers as a national leader. Steve Martin as Rigby Reardon speaks to us via internal monologue. He's hungover and business is slow, but right on cue there's a knock at his locked office door. Backward from our perspective, we can read the stenciled letters Rigby Reardon Detective Agency on his window, and through the frosted glass the outline of a distraught woman in a large hat. Rigby opens the door, and the woman tilts her hat brim slowly to reveal the gorgeous face of actress Rachel Ward. She barely begins her story before noticing the newspaper in his hands and fainting into his arms. Unsure how to react, Rigby shakes her around ineffectively, and upon recognizing her beauty, checks that the coast is clear before stealing a kiss from the unconscious woman. None of this wakes her up though, and it's unclear if it was intended to. He shakes her a bit more and then lays her across his couch. He closes his office door and returns to the couch, but glances up at the cross-stitched advice of a friend framed on the wall. Don't fall in love with a client, Marlowe. Presumably this gift is from Raymond Chandler's famous era detective, Phillip Marlowe, who we'll see later in the story.
Do we think he cross-stitched it himself?
Definitely.
What the hell does Marlowe know?
Rigby disregards the framed advice and grips the sleeping woman's breasts with both hands. Of course, this wakes her up, and when she asks what he's doing, he offers a lame excuse.
Adjusting your breasts. You fainted and they shifted all out of whack. There.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do like that he didn't stop right when she asked him, like he's like just finishing it. He's like, okay, now you're good.
Yeah, and that the excuse is not actually any better than just groping her.
Yeah.
You have to commit to it now.
Yeah.
Because she's got you doing it. It's
If
like,
I stop immediately, I'll look way guiltier.
Yeah.
I have to be like, no, they're still not ready. She deduces that she fainted when she saw the newspaper headline in his hands. Since the paper fell face down on the floor, the back page sports headline we can see reads, "Dodgers lose again," which is an odd headline for a Los Angeles paper since the Dodgers wouldn't move here until over a decade later. I feel like it would mention the team that won instead.
You must be quite a Dodger fan.
No, I saw the front page.
Rigby flips it back to the story of the scientist, John Hay Forrest, who died in the opening car accident. Rigby strikes a match with his thumb and lights his cigarette before tossing the spent matchstick across the room to the ashtray on his desk. The woman introduces herself as Juliet Forrest, daughter of the deceased. He offers to make her a cup of coffee. He intuits that she suspects foul play in her father's death and adopts the posture of a classic noir detective framed in an Art Deco window, leaning back in his chair with his feet propped up on his desk. In the days preceding his death, her father would often scribble lists of names on scraps of paper. She's brought one as an example, the corner of a dollar bill crowded with handwritten names. Rigby licks the paper and sticks it to his nose before blowing it off with a dismissive puff.
You deducted murder and a giant conspiracy from this?
Acknowledging he's offended her, he agrees to take the case for a price of $10 a day plus expenses, which seems incredibly cheap even for the time. I feel like Marlowe would often charge $20 to $100 depending on the apparent wealth of the client. This lady has a butler. She offers a down payment of $200.
$200, I'd shoot my grandmother.
That won't be necessary.
Never can tell. My last case, I had to throw my own brother out of an airplane. Poor sap.
This is an elaboration of a joke from Frank Tuttle's 1942 film, This Gun for Hire, which we'll describe clips from shortly.
For 10%, I dig up my wife's mother.
Miss Forrest offers the key to her father's office where Rigby Reardon might find more clues. When she coughs up the address, Rigby recognizes it as a shady neighborhood, but Juliet explains that her father's work with cheeses often offended people with its odor. As he drives across town, he can't get his gorgeous client out of his head.
I hadn't seen a body put together like that since I'd solved the case of the murdered girl with the big tits.
This is by far my favorite joke in the film, and it's a shame it comes so early. Because I love over-explaining things, the double punchline kills me here. You would expect the joke is about a body being put together, so it already works if the sentence ended with, "I solved the case of the murdered girl." But then when you add "with the big tits," it becomes clear that no, it's a double fake, and he's actually talking about the murdered girl's figure and not her literal reassembly. In a desk drawer at Mr. Forrest's office, he finds a photo and love note from a woman named Kitty, who we'll see later in a clip from the 1946 film The Killers, playing the same Kitty Collins character.
Is she actually named Kitty Collins in the movie?
In that movie, yes.
Okay.
But we'll see multiple Ava Gardner films.
Right, that makes sense.
Rigby assumes this is an affair partner, hence not Juliet's mother. Disassembling the desk further, he finds another list of names. At the top, it's labeled Enemies of Carlotta. Pausing the film and expecting to find joke names, all I noticed was the full name, Kitty Collins, and a note of Santa Barbara with a question mark. Kitty's name is also bracketed on the left-hand side with the following name, Swede Anderson, which is Burt Lancaster's character from the same 1946 film. Again, that's the actual character's name in the film.
I guess we'd have to look at each of the clips, but I don't recall them actually saying their own names in those clips.
They say Kitty Collins a few times, and
Do
they do say Swede Anderson or Ole Anderson, which is his first name. Swede is his nickname.
So they probably just kept the names that they had to.
Yeah, well, for the most part they do, and then some of them they just completely randomly change.
Yeah.
Peeling the taped list off the desk, he finds a second page labeled Friends of Carlotta. Now we cut to the second clip of the film as a man played by Alan Ladd sneaks up to an identical office door to the one we just saw Rigby push into. He gives a quick knock, introducing himself as an exterminator. Rigby tucks the Carlotta lists into his coat pocket before inviting the supposed exterminator inside. He also invites the man to take a seat and try a cookie from the table.
There's some cookies on the table. Have one.
which is the same instructions this character gets in the actual film.
Try a cookie. They're very good.
But there, the chewing sound isn't quite as pronounced. Eventually, the exterminator pulls a gun and fires at Rigby, who dodges the shot and makes a run for the kitchen. The gunman races to the kitchen door and, unable to push his way in, shoots through it to take Rigby down. To verify he hasn't missed his target, the shooter shoves open the door, moving Rigby across the kitchen floor where he plays dead. We get an original insert of the man collecting Rigby's lists from his coat pocket before he leaves. In the original film, this man is Philip Raven, an assassin hired to deliver money to a blackmailer named Baker. Inside this apartment, he finds Baker and Baker's secretary waiting for him. The secretary moves to the kitchen to answer a whistling kettle, and Raven kills Baker, intending to leave with both the blackmail evidence and the payment. After a struggle at the kitchen door, he shoots the secretary through it, and then forces it open to verify she's dead. We learn later that Raven's payment for this job contained marked bills, and he spends the rest of the film on the run from a police lieutenant played by Robert Preston. We cut to a mansion where a bald butler, played by this film's director Carl Reiner, arranges flowers in a vase when he hears a knock at the door. Rigby is standing at the porch and asks the butler to inform Miss Forrest that he is here and bleeding from a gunshot.
Catch me.
Sorry. I'm a butler, not a catcher.
We jump to a super close insert of Juliet's mouth as she leans over Rigby, and we see her sucking vigorously at his gunshot wound until she pries the bullet loose with her teeth.
Where'd you learn that?
At camp.
You learned that at girls' camp?
Well, it's really for snakebite, but I find it works for everything.
And even though the joke was basically already made, I wanted Rigby to say, well, that's a relief, because these kidney stones are killing me.
That brings up one of my major problems with this movie.
That they never go the whole way into the joke?
They never go the whole way into a joke, or there's just so many long scenes without a joke.
Yeah.
Or the jokes are just so bland that it's like,
yeah.
Even when Steve Martin says them, I'm not laughing.
Coming off of something like The Jerk, and certainly going into The Man with Two Brains,
which is nonstop laugh out loud stuff.
Yeah, it's like there's always something happening. And so, like, not to kind of go back, but this is like hammering my point, because it was a problem. I watched this with my father, and I was just like, there could have been a joke there. There could have been a joke there. Like when he lights a cigarette and he throws his match and it lands in the ashtray. I was like, well, that's not funny.
No.
Yeah.
Like, why show it if it's not going to be something funny?
Yeah, there's no punchline there.
Yeah.
But maybe they were trying too hard to hold close to the style of a noir.
But I just feel like you have movies like Johnny Dangerously, where they're able to make a joke out of every single moment and every single scene without breaking, the period.
Yeah, like the lettering on his door. One of the things should have been facing the wrong direction.
Right. Or like I was saying, that there should have been some joke names in the friends and enemies of Carlotta lists, and they're just regular names.
Like in the silhouette of the door, he opens it up, but it's just like the cleaning lady, and she just happens to be standing in such a way.
Not the cleaning lady.
Bad choice of words.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, and that's throughout this whole movie.
Yeah.
I just kept wishing and waiting for there to be something funny to happen.
It's very mild the whole way through. Rigby asks Juliet about Kitty Collins and Swede Anderson. She says Kitty was a mistress of her father's and Swede Anderson was Kitty's boyfriend. He's a former boxer who works at a gas station, and she performs at a nightclub. She presents to Rigby yet another clue from her father's desk. It's a scrap of paper with a note that reads,
Thanks for the check. In case I'm indisposed, that $1 you gave me for safekeeping is in the top of the sugar bowl.
Rigby reads the initials phonetically, but Juliet corrects him that SSH stands for Samuel H. Hastings.
My brother-in-law, or at least he was. He and my sister Leona are separated.
Rigby asks to speak with her sister Leona, and she warns him her sister has been diagnosed as a paranoid hypochondriac. He decides to call her anyway.
I'll know after one word if she's faking.
Hello?
She's faking.
We cut to Barbara Stanwyck as Leona Stevenson from Anatoly Litvak's 1948 film Sorry Wrong Number, sobbing maniacally into the phone. She seems not to have gotten the news of her father's death.
My name's Reardon. Sorry to hear your father's passed on.
No, he hasn't. He won't be back till Sunday.
Sunday? You don't understand, Mrs. Hastings. I'm investigating your father's death.
Well, that's absurd. My father called me from Chicago tonight. He never mentioned a word.
Maybe he slipped his mind.
As the call continues, Leona gets more and more hysterical until Rigby can't deal with her any longer. She actually ends up spending most of the original movie ranting maniacally into the phone like this until the end when, spoiler alert, a gunman arrives to put her out of her misery.
No!
Leona, hello? Leona! Sorry, wrong number.
Rigby says that he's going to seek out Juliet's brother-in-law, Sam, for more clues, and Juliet offers a seemingly benign comment on his way out.
If I'm not home, leave a message with the butler or the cleaning woman.
Cleaning woman. Cleaning woman. Cleaning woman. Cleaning woman. Cleaning woman.
The phrase seems to transform Rigby into a psychopathic murderer, and he wraps his hands tight around her neck, choking her almost to death. Eventually, he lets go and explains that his father left his mother for a cleaning woman during his childhood, and now the phrase consistently sends him into a murderous rage. It's actually a version of a famous vaudeville joke nicknamed Slowly I Turned, and it's been reused in The Three Stooges, where a certain phrase just turns a character into a complete monster.
And then I came face to face with a rat that had ruined my life. It was in Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls! Slowly I turned, and step by step, inch by inch, I walked up to him and I smashed him. I hit him. I bumped him. I tore him to pieces and I knocked him down. Oh, take it easy, bud. Take it easy. Excuse me, kid. It's that word Niagara Falls. Every time I hear it, it tears me apart. Don't do me any good either.
Juliet is weirdly understanding and forgiving of his condition. Rigby stops by several bars following Hastings' tab from address to address.
He was staying at the Hotel Ward on 5th Street. It used to be on 8th Street, but they'd taken so many rubber checks it bounced all the way across town.
When Rigby finally knocks on the correct door, we cut inside to a clip from Billy Wilder's 1945 film The Lost Weekend, starring Ray Milland as Sam Hastings here, but Don Burnham in the original film. This is the first of the recycled films to feature the work of both Edith Head and Miklos Rozsa for both halves of the hybrid scene. Sam Hastings approaches the door cautiously and seemingly intoxicated. Hastings keeps the slide lock engaged, so Rigby has to deal through the cracked door. He offers $5 for the $1 bill tucked into the lid of the sugar bowl. In the movie, Milland's character has been stranded in the apartment without any booze and lucks upon this $10 bill that his brother left for the cleaning lady, enough to buy a couple bottles for the day. We get an original insert of the sugar bowl cash scribbled with names being exchanged for Rigby's $5, and later, Rigby and Juliet confirm the torn corner fits snugly against the rest of this bill. But it's unsatisfying as a story point, because the names on the money are the same enemies of Carlotta we already saw listed earlier. Juliet even admits the only names she can make out are the ones that Rigby was already interested in tracking down.
I feel like this goes to what you were saying about like the scenes not being particularly interesting that we're finding inserts for.
Yeah.
So it's like you had to go through these films and you had to find something generic enough that you could stick it into this movie or cut around like any specifics so that it would fit this movie. But in doing so, you've lost anything interesting in terms of the plot.
Yeah, they're focusing so much on getting the gimmick right.
Yeah.
That the interstitials, the stuff that's connecting these scenes to each other, is completely disinteresting nonsense. Who cares about these lists? The lists never pay off. There's never a point to either one of these lists.
Well, because none of these inserts can move the story forward.
Yeah, but I mean, even in the context of having knowledge of the entire film, I don't know what Enemies of Carlotta versus Friends of Carlotta means. I don't know what these lists are for. Why did he keep these lists? Why does he have the...
Try to explain it at the end.
We'll come back to it.
Okay.
Most of the names are illegible, but I can work out Kitty Collins and Swede Anderson.
Though she's confused by the acronym FOC at the top of the list.
But what does FOC mean?
It's a slang word. It's when a man and a woman are in love. The man puts his...
No, written here, FOC.
Oh. Unless I miss my guess, that stands for Friends of Carlotta.
What bothers me here is that when we saw the Kitty and Swede earlier, they were listed as enemies of Carlotta, so why are they trading lists now? I don't get it. Juliet is impressed by Rigby's detective work, so he does her one better.
I think that's impressive.
He pulls the cigarette out of his mouth and pretends to shove it in his ear before pulling it back out of his mouth, and she laughs when he lights it. Rigby learns that Kitty Collins is performing tonight at a venue called the Brentwood Room, and the poster outside features the same photograph of Kitty Collins' actress Ava Gardner from the framed note in deceased Mr. Forrest's office desk.
The Brentwood Room, where rich women go to meet rich men so they can have rich kids.
It's like a half joke. It's like, it sounds like it could be funny, but it's not actually funny. For the first shot inside the club, we get an impressive technical maneuver. Footage of Ava Gardner as Kitty Collins sitting at a piano is being rear projected on a screen, and several stand-ins are staged in the foreground to appear in the same scene. Rigby walks up between them to call to her, and the illusion is near seamless. He pretends he's a movie producer with a boxing film that needs a woman to play a singer, but she shoots down his pitch.
The idea of two men beating each other to a pulp makes me ill.
Well, I'm also doing a religious picture, the story of Saint Betty. You know, the nun who taught the lepers sing.
Rigby takes a flying leap and mentions outright that Johnnie Forrest told him she was a friend of Carlotta's. Kitty quickly stands to wordlessly leave the room. The original footage here comes from Robert Siodmak's 1946 film The Killers, again originally composed by this film's composer Miklos Rozsa. It tells the story of an insurance investigator named Jim Reardon, from whom our protagonist takes his surname, played by Edmund O'Brien, investigating the professional assassination of retired boxer Ole Anderson, played by Burt Lancaster. Ava Gardner co-stars as Ole's love interest, Kitty Collins. In today's film, Rigby informs us that he followed Kitty to a restaurant the next day, and we see him watching her discreetly over the edge of a menu. He is simultaneously smoking a cigar, and eventually holds the menu close enough to his face to accidentally burn a hole through it with the tip of the cigar.
See, that's funny.
Yeah.
You took a what it would be a bland scene of him just watching someone with a menu, and you put a joke in there.
Yeah.
Now do that with everything.
Yeah, a few times in each scene, please. Kitty notices him from her table and reaches to the edge of her collar to unclip a jewel-encrusted spider brooch off of her dress. A waiter comes by to collect her finished soup bowl, and Rigby intercepts the waiter in the kitchen.
Hello, pal. From the health department. We have a report that your soup has too much jewelry in it.
He digs the brooch out of the leftover soup and then pops open a clasp in the center to reveal a hidden compartment containing a single folded-up piece of paper.
So it's a spider brooch, and yet, again, too much jewelry in it isn't actually very, witty, but, there's a bug in the soup. There's a spider in the soup.
Yeah.
It's more, I don't know.
Yep. On the front of the paper, it has a list labeled EOC, presumably enemies of Carlotta, and all the names are crossed off. But the back of the paper has an address for Swede Anderson. In the original 1946 film, Kitty is caught by a policeman at a fancy restaurant wearing a stolen diamond-encrusted spider brooch and attempts to ditch the piece in a discarded bowl of soup, but the cop is the one who intercepts it and then asks Kitty to explain herself. To protect Kitty, Ole Anderson falsely claims responsibility and punches out the cop, earning 3 years in prison on her behalf. The original brooch is just jewelry, though. It has no hidden compartment. They just made a perfect replica for this film that actually opens up and has stuff in it. The only name on the list that wasn't crossed off was Swede Anderson. When Rigby stops by later that night, he finds Burt Lancaster as Swede Anderson from the same film, 1946's The Killers. At first, Swede is motionless on his bed, and Rigby assumes the worst.
Sorry, Swede, I thought you had been murdered.
Which is sort of an in-joke, because in the first act of the movie, he's murdered here in this room, and we spend the entire film in flashbacks trying to figure out who did it and why.
That's pretty deep for somebody who hasn't seen the movie.
Because Swede Anderson is laying with his face obscured in shadow, they're able to recreate the set with a stand-in so that Steve Martin can come and poke him on the bed in search of a reaction. He insists Swede Anderson needs a cup of his famous Java, and he heads to the kitchen to brew a pot of coffee. He quickly finds a pan and a bag of coffee grounds and gingerly shakes the bag over the course of 3.5 minutes. And just when you think he's done, he keeps going until the bag is literally empty, meaning he didn't have to pour so carefully this whole time.
This goes so long. I can't believe how long it holds on it. He must have a tube going down his sleeve. I don't know.
He might. They might be faking it.
I feel like they've got to be feeding this coffee forever.
Yeah.
This was a scene that got a chuckle out of me.
Yeah,
because it's just going on, and even he goes,
yeah, he's annoyed that it's taking as long as it is, and it's you're picking the speed. He cracks a pair of eggs over the grounds, and Rigby assures Swede the coffee will be ready soon. But just then, 2 goons step into the apartment and fire on the sleepy Swede, killing him in bed. Apparently, 1 bullet from this shooting landed way off target in the same bullet hole in Rigby's left arm as he was previously shot by Alan Ladd's Exterminator character from This Gun for Hire.
This is never gonna heal.
I guess the egg thing, when he cracks it over the grounds, I thought that was just another version of a joke, but that's a thing that people did. Yeah, you put eggshells in the coffee grounds because it made it less acidic or something like that. We cut right back to Juliet's home where she sucks the bullet out yet again, much faster this time. He confesses that he may have been too quick to dismiss her suspicion of a conspiracy. He makes a quick phone call to a friend, and we see a phone ringing beside the bed of Humphrey Bogart as Raymond Chandler's Phillip Marlowe character, from Howard Hawks' 1946 film The Big Sleep. And we get a fun little meta joke about the footage being recycled from something else when Marlowe calls him by the complete wrong name.
Hello, Marlowe.
Oh, hello, Bernie.
No, it's me, Rigby.
What's up?
In the original, Marlowe is speaking with Regis Toomey as Chief Inspector Bernie Oles. The running gag between fellow detectives Rigby and Marlowe is that Rigby is embarrassed by Marlowe's schlubby unprofessionalism. Rigby's already annoyed that Marlowe is still sleeping at 2 in the afternoon. He invites Marlowe to his office to help with the case, but insists he wear a tie.
And that was also like, I thought, because in the next clip that they show,
he won't be.
He'll be wearing the tie that Steve Martin gives it.
Right, and then he doesn't.
Because they do an insert of the tie.
Right.
So it's like, okay, that'll be a funny way to use the clip if he has.
But the crazy thing is that watching those movies, he wears a bow tie specifically that looks so much like that one, and it's not in the rest of this movie.
But they never actually show it. Yeah.
So it's like he gave it to him and he wore it for the rest of a different movie.
Yeah.
Maybe it was that they had another scene in mind and then they ended up ditching it and they were like, well, should we take out all this tie stuff? And it's like, who cares?
Or maybe they're trying to like reverse origin story.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Like, so if you go to
it's
watch
like
that
the
movie,
Rogue One version, you're like, everyone was asking, where the hell did this bow tie come from? Oh, Steve Martin gave it to him. Now I get it.
Everyone's asking.
Now the movie makes sense. Presumably, all the time Rigby spends on the road trying to interview people, Juliet spends scouring her father's same desk for additional clues. This time she found a key with a note that reads, most recent rat. Rigby deduces that this is a reference to the rotating Chinese calendar of animal years.
Most recent year of the rat was 1936. This is the key to locker number 1936.
You're a very smart man.
So is Abraham Lincoln. What happened to him? Smart can get you killed.
A silent moment passes between them, and via internal monologue, Rigby considers and dismisses the notion of admitting his feelings for Juliet. He decides that in his line of work, a wife and kids would be impossible to maintain.
You wouldn't have to have kids.
What?
Apparently she's been reading his thoughts this whole time. Rigby rushes her to the door so he can have a private chat with Marlowe when he gets here. On her way out, Juliet paraphrases Bacall's line from To Have and Have Not.
You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow.
But Juliet's version is somehow even more sexually charged.
You know how to dial, don't you? You just put your finger in the hole and make tiny little circles.
That's like, that's the most blatant, super funny line, and they give it to Rachel Ward. It's not even Steve Martin getting to say it. That's great.
I think that might be the funniest line.
It's pretty great. Sometime later, we see Rigby cleaning his revolver in the bathroom sink when Marlowe arrives, just as tireless as Rigby predicted.
You know how I hate that dumb way of wearing your shirt button with no tie. Let me get you a tie. Here. This one's blue, but you can wear it with brown.
You annoy me.
I annoy you. You come in here with no tie. You drunk?
This shot of Bogart is actually not Marlowe, though. It comes from Nicholas Ray's 1950 film In a Lonely Place. Bogart stars as Dixon Steele, a screenwriter with unchecked anger issues. At the start, it feels very much like a Sunset Boulevard retread, but they only came out like 3 months apart, and the stories diverge quickly when Bogey's Steele is suddenly the lead suspect in a murder.
Could you imagine having to do the research for this film in the 80s? Oh. No, not like this. Yeah. I mean the original research to write the thing, because like how inconvenient was it to scrub through all these movies? I mean, they picked 19...
and by scrub, you mean literally screen them in a theater.
I know,
that's
literally
the only way you
on
could do it.
film, they're scrubbing back and forth, or like a...
Flatbed,
yeah. Because you have to literally rewatch these things over and over, and they picked 19 films. I'm sure they watched 20 more,
I think like, Reiner said he watched like 300
I believe
to put together all the notes for this.
And then to actually narrow it down to these particular scenes, and like this is so much work.
Yeah.
More work than I think just making a movie is. Like,
yeah, and I don't think it totally pays off either.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem of it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how much like the licensing of all those clips, because I'm sure I was talking to this with my dad, and I'm not sure what people's contracts were like back when these films were made, but I was saying like you can't just take a clip from a movie and have the actor be presented saying something out of context of the movie.
Right, yeah, you would have to, they would still get residuals for it, you would think.
Well, but you also can't, but you usually need their permission or the studio's permission, because, if you can't take a clip where someone says something and make it seem like they're saying something bad or
maybe
endorsing something.
You can, because contracts in the 40s and 50s were like the studio owns everything.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But I was explaining to him like actors today, like if you like redubbing people's voices or editing their
you get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So I was wondering what kind of like clearances, because some of these people might still be alive.
Yes, many of them were. Yeah.
So having them be portrayed or do something different on screen that they intended, I'm sure maybe could have irked somebody.
Like I know Steve Martin's still alive. Right? That's what you meant? Rigby hands Marlowe the list from the spider brooch and asks him to verify that the crossed off names are all dead people. He also gives him a bow tie to wear so he looks a little more professional in the future. Rigby heads over to Union Station in Los Angeles to use Forrest's key on locker number 1936. Do you guys recall the last time we saw someone follow a key to a locker containing yet another clue?
Wrong is right.
That's all right.
There you go.
That's the one.
That wrong is right.
Wrong is right is right.
Before that, it would have been Juggernaut?
Possibly, yeah. Well, they're trying to pay him.
Right, but aren't they watching the locker?
And then someone breaks into it from the back, or is that in the MacGyver episode?
That would definitely in the MacGyver episode.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if that happens in the Juggernaut.
There's also some clues in lockers in the Midnight Madness, but there's definitely stuff on the way to that.
Also, this locker in 1936 is like next to locker like 18 or like
yeah, the numbers make no sense at all.
Yeah, it was like what?
Inside, Rigby finds even longer lists of Carlotta's friends and enemies, and the name F.X. Huberman stands out for unexplained reasons.
Oddly enough, it's like in a safety deposit box style box.
He notices someone tailing him and makes an effort to lose the guy in the bathroom before boarding a train to visit Huberman.
There was no way he could have followed me unless I had toilet paper stuck to my shoe. Damn.
And before I could even remark out loud that what we see clearly isn't toilet paper but a seat cover, Rigby makes the observation himself.
It wasn't really toilet paper, it was a seat cover. But it was enough for a smart guy to make the connection.
Do they even have seat covers back then?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
For this sequence, we are reverting back to the rear projection strategy, and we see Cary Grant sitting down in a train car, and across the car, Steve Martin is seated in front of the screen, but positioned as if facing the actor. This footage is essentially the opening scene of Alfred Hitchcock's 1941 film, Suspicion. Joan Fontaine stars as a young heiress, Lena McLaidlaw, opposite Grant as Johnnie Aysgarth. Lena meets Johnny on the train, and the two race through a whirlwind romance and are soon married, at which point Johnny starts sprouting red flags. He's lied about his wealth, he makes grand plans for how to spend her parents' money, and Lena struggles to judge whether or not her new husband is unintentionally suspicious or capable of plotting her murder. In today's film, we're intended to understand that Cary Grant's character was the man following Rigby through the train station.
You don't smoke, do you?
Oh, no, I have tuberculosis.
Oh, thank heavens for that.
Obviously, this isn't how the joke goes in the original film.
You don't smoke, do you?
No, I don't.
Oh, thank heavens for that.
In an effort to lose the man again, Rigby pulls out a harmonica to play his carmate to sleep, and a random shot of Cary Grant slowly closing his eyes is meant to imply the man drifting off to slumberland from the harmonica lullaby. That's all we get of Cary Grant in this film. That seems like a waste. We didn't really do anything.
And again, we aren't able to move the story forward. So there was a guy chasing him, and he ditches him.
He's not chasing him. Who does he represent? Nobody knows. Why is this guy following him? Doesn't matter. On to the next scene. Rigby hops off the train at the Grunion Point station and tries to catch a fast cab to FX Huberman's address.
It's $3 if you can get this cab to 46 Bay Court in 10 minutes.
And then the car speeds off without him, hoping to win the cash. He flags down a second cab and orders it to follow the first, and I really wanted it to leave without him too. As far as I could tell, the first cinematic appearance of this gag is in the Marx Brothers film Duck Soup, where Groucho is riding in the sidecar of Harpo's motorcycle and orders him to get going.
If you run out of gas, get Ethel. If Ethel runs out, get Mabel. Now step on it.
And Harpo speeds off on the bike without the sidecar attached, leaving Groucho stranded. A closer approximation of this version comes from 1934's Shadow of the Thin Man, when Nick and Nora hail a taxi.
Follow that car, quick!
Yes, ma'am.
But possibly my favorite variation on the gag comes from 1975's The Return of the Pink Panther, when Inspector Clouseau orders the cabbie to follow a car.
Follow that car!
And the driver gets out and chases the other car on foot. Clouseau's just sitting in the back of the cab like, did he just get out? With more voiceover, Rigby explains he took both cabs on purpose so Cary Grant couldn't follow him.
Well, so I have a big problem with this as a joke because, again, he sort of negates his own joke.
Right, he does. He undoes
so,
it
like,
here.
in the as soon as the first cab takes off, he makes it sound like that was intentional. It's like, well, good, now I'll have this one follow. But it's not in a jokey enough way, like he's trying to cover himself. He says it very seriously, like he did it on purpose. And I'm like, either you have to make it a joke, like you're trying to not look bad to us, and go all in, or act or don't say it at all, and then it's funnier.
Right.
But he would need another person for that joke to work.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense for him to lie in his internal monologue, because who's he lying to? Himself?
Yeah, like if he should have been with Rachel Ward and said, that was really clever of me to
Or she could have said that, like, oh, that was clever of you to take both cabs, and then he would be like, oh, yes, lovely. When he gets to Huberman's place, he's shocked to find that Huberman is a woman, played by Ingrid Bergman, hosting a crowded party. The scene comes from another Hitchcock title, specifically 1946's Notorious. Steve Martin's Rigby Reardon is now acting as a body double for Cary Grant in that film, in a long series of over-the-shoulder shots. After a mere line or two of barely flirting, Bergman's Huberman character stands to excuse all her guests and declare the party over for some private time with Rigby. Just as they find themselves alone together, he realizes he's been drugged.
She'd slipped me a Mickey. My lips felt like 2 manhole covers. My tongue felt like it had hair on it. My ears started to ring. I felt like a dog. Woof! Woof, Huberman, woof! Come on. Let's go out dancing. You put on your black dress, and I'll go shave my tongue.
Now, I was trying to think, is this the first person that we've had in an old film clip that we've actually had on a previous movie of the podcast?
I don't think so. Burt Lancaster we've definitely had in a few things.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
But I definitely remember we had Ingmar Bergman in the mixed up files, right?
I think Ingrid Bergman was...
Did I say Ingmar?
you were, well, Ingrid Bergman appears in Ingmar Bergman films.
Yeah.
So it's very confusing. But she is Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler in that film. And oddly enough, Lauren Bacall played her in the TV movie remake that they did. Mm-hmm. So it's just funny because they're both Bogart co-stars.
We'll have another one here, too, that we've had already. We'll have Vincent Price coming up.
Right. And we also have had Lana Turner, Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, because I was going to say...
we'll get to more later.
Yeah.
Sometime later, while Rigby stands in the bathroom actually shaving his tongue, Bergman sneaks in to steal the locker key that Rigby left outside the bathroom. In the film, Bergman's Alicia Huberman is the uninvolved daughter of a convicted Nazi spy. She ejects her party guests so that she can unknowingly flirt with an undercover government agent played by Cary Grant, here to recruit her to infiltrate a suspected Nazi stronghold. She's asked to ingratiate herself with friends of her father's, and eventually even marries one of them, Alexander Sebastian, played by Claude Rains, to breach their inner circle. The key she steals here opens the wine cellar of her new Nazi husband's mansion, and within the bottles downstairs she finds the actual wine has been replaced with uranium ore. The first bottle they check is a 1936 vintage, aka the most recent rat.
Why is it spicy? Because it's uranium. It's not wine. You don't know that meme?
I don't know that meme. When the intoxicated Rigby tries to announce to Huberman that he's ready to go dancing, he collapses face first into the carpet and wakes up back in his office. Rigby sees someone silhouetted in his office's textured glass partitions, and when the shape approaches, he goes for his gun, but realizes just in time that this is Juliet, here with a rag and alcohol to treat his bloodied knees, on which he must have crawled all the way back to the office. He apologizes for the scare he just gave her. When she moves in to apply the rag to his injuries, he shouts her away with increasing desperation until he's forced to point his gun in her face again.
Oh, no, that's okay.
It's just a little.
No, they're fine. They're fine.
It's just a little.
Really, they don't hurt at all.
It doesn't hurt. Don't be a baby.
Get back!
She informs him that her alcoholic brother-in-law, Sam Hastings, has allegedly died from falling out a window reaching for alcohol.
He could have been pushed. I'll have Marlowe check his back for fingerprints.
She presents yet another note she found in the same desk where she's found every note so far. This one says NYTAG 216, and she assumes it's a license plate, but Rigby offers a convoluted alternative.
It's not NYTAG, it's NYT, New York Times.
So what's AG?
That's standard library talk for August.
And 216?
Stands for the August 2nd issue, page 1, column 6.
He puts in a call to an associate he addresses as Hot Legs and asks them to read him the referenced column. He offers to wine and dine Hot Legs as a reward for helping out, and in the background, Juliet is not amused.
You'd wine and dine her for information?
Her. Him.
She's a he.
He learns from Hot Legs that a man named Walter Neff owns a South American cruise ship called Immer Essen. Not only is Juliet able to translate its name from German to the English phrase always eating, but she claims her late brother-in-law, Sam Hastings, took a tour on that ship after separating from her sister last summer. Rigby points out, as though it were a cosmic coincidence, that the cruise line shut down soon after, and then Hastings was killed, or died by coincidence. We haven't confirmed anything. Honestly, as much as I enjoy the gimmick here, and some of the comedy still works, the biggest failing is that none of the clues mean anything, and the actual mystery of the film is never remotely compelling. I don't care what's going on with the cruise thing. I don't care what Carlotta means.
Right.
I don't care any of this.
That's because we haven't spent any time establishing characters.
Right. Because we can't, because they all have to be single-serving characters that are only there for 13 seconds, and then we move on to the next scene. So far, a scientist died in a car crash, and he has 2 lists of people in his office who have also died. That's everything that's happened in the first 30 minutes. The phone on Rigby's desk rings, and we get a second phone call scene from Hawks' The Big Sleep.
Hello? Who is it?
Mr. Marlowe.
Oh, hello, Mr. Marlowe. Would you hold a moment, please?
Juliet hands Rigby the phone, and he peppers Marlowe with questions on this Walter Neff character. Rigby offers that the man owns a cruise ship company, and Marlowe says that's not all he cruises for.
Cruises supermarkets looking for blondes? Good. I'll supply the blonde.
And even as he makes the comment, he snaps another match to life to one-handedly light Juliet's cigarette. The obvious implication being that by simply applying a blonde wig to his lovely accomplice here, they can lure Neff into their trap, but Rigby has other plans.
Sorry, you're not blonde enough.
Which is the opposite of the problem Jared Leto had when he applied to Project Mayhem.
And you're too fucking blonde!
Rigby clarifies soon after that he can't allow her to participate in the investigation because if she dies, he doesn't get paid.
Is that all you think of me? Someone who pays you $10 a day?
Rigby slides a small box across the inside of his medicine cabinet so he can read another framed cross-stitch reminder inside from his old pal Marlowe. Guns don't kill detectives. Love does. Marlowe. Rigby confirms her assessment, but his internal monologue is desperate to reveal the truth, that he'd do this job for free just to be near her. As his internal voice describes her body in vivid detail, his hand unconsciously grips a tube of toothpaste tight enough to squeeze most of it out onto the floor.
And then gently caress her 2 beautiful...
Sorry. I just don't like being called a meal ticket.
That night, Rigby drives out to the home of a potential blonde for his scheme named Monica Stillpond. Here, we're treated to footage from Stuart Heisler's 1942 film adaptation of Dashiell Hammett's The Glass Key with costumes by Edith Head. It tells the story of a gubernatorial candidate, Ralph Henry, whose daughter Janet, played by Veronica Lake, catches the eye of big-time gangster Paul Madvig, played by Brian Donlevy. To win Janet's heart, Paul offers her father his assistance in the election, and when Henry turns the offer down, Madvig retaliates by framing him for murder. Stepping inside the mansion, Rigby snaps his fingers to summon the obedient Monica Stillpond, originally Veronica Lake's Janet Henry character, from a lively upper-class dinner party.
There's one thing I liked about Monica. The words I can't weren't in her vocabulary. Monica, I want you to do something for me.
I can't.
Well, I guess she'd added them since the last time I'd seen her.
The scene ends there, and Rigby moves on to another ex, Doris Davermont. Hot on the heels of describing their love as the most honest in his lifetime, he explains to us that he actually employed a fake name for the entire duration of their relationship.
I'd told her I was Teddy Novak so she couldn't track me down if I got her pregnant.
Obviously, the alternate name story is a joke on the fact that we, the audience, understand he's taking the place in the original scene of a man named Carol Novak. The scene repurposes footage from Irving Rapper's 1946 film Deception. It tells the story of a long-separated couple, Bette Davis's Christine Radcliffe and Paul Henreid's Carol Novak, reunited and trying to form a life together, but threatened by a wealthy and jealous suitor of Christine's, composer Alexander Hellenius, played by Claude Rains. The first thing one is likely to notice about the scene is that Bette Davis, playing Davermont here, is not blonde, but presumably he expects her to bleach her hair or don a wig. It suddenly occurs to her to prepare coffee and sandwiches for them to share, but Rigby informs us that he remembers her recipe for sandwiches.
Should buy day-old bread and then toast it to cover up. Wonder if she's changed.
The bread's none too fresh. Shall I toast it?
No thanks. I gave up stale toast for Lent.
Lent?
Nothing.
Same old Doris.
The funniest part of this already funny bit is that in the original, Henreid's Novak character is actually asking if she owns the apartment outright or if it was lent to her.
This place, is it lent to you?
Lent?
When Davermont mentions that her cleaning woman must have taken some of the leftovers, the phrase predictably sends Rigby into another uncontrollable rage. The cleaning woman line actually appears in the original Deception script, and just as Davis's Radcliffe character mentions it, Novak is realizing she couldn't possibly have afforded this apartment on her own, and when she hesitates to explain it, his hands are quickly wrapped around her throat, because he suspects she's being provided for by another man. In both Deception and this film, Bette Davis's character seemed to instantaneously recover from the strangulation. We cut right back to Rigby on the road.
I was too embarrassed to ask Doris for a favor after I'd just tried to strangle her. So I went to the next name in my little black book. The blondest one on my list was a rich society dame named Jimmi-Sue Altfeld.
I think that this is an example of one of the better uses of it in terms of like integrating it into the story.
Yeah.
But it still didn't progress it at all.
Yeah.
It was just like, here's another woman who said no to me.
Yeah, it's basically a montage of blonde auditions. The girl's name is Jimmi-Sue Altfeld, and we cut right to the two of them in a car together. The source of this footage is Mervyn LeRoy's 1941 film Johnnie Aysgarth. Jimmi-Sue here is being played by Lana Turner, Lisbeth Bard in the original film.
Last time we saw each other, I left you alone sitting at a counter at Schwab's.
A reference to the famous Hollywood yarn that the fledgling actress Lana Turner was actually discovered by Johnnie Aysgarth director LeRoy while sipping a soda at a Hollywood Schwab's soda fountain. Despite the legend, the fountain was not at a Schwab's, but the Top Hat Cafe a few miles east on Sunset. Jimmi-Sue forgives Rigby for abandoning her at Schwab's and asks for a ride home. Hoping to avoid an encounter with Jimmi-Sue's cantankerous father, Rigby has other plans.
So I told her to meet me later at a motel, and I'd show her something I learned with my hands.
And we jump cut right to the room where we see him doing shadow puppets on the wall, but his hands in the reverse angle never come close to resembling the shadows on the wall, which are probably an expert shadow puppeteer. Rigby emulates a pair of apes, an elephant, an Abraham Lincoln head, which is clearly just a cutout being raised into frame to eclipse the shadow hands.
A joke that would be used in Gremlins 2.
Yeah, they do the Abraham Lincoln head.
Do Abraham
That's funny.
Lincoln.
Lastly, he emulates a pair of ducks kissing, but then in the reverse angle, we see he's actually holding a pair of wooden ducks. So the shadows are just accurate shadows of ducks. Amusingly, the show is punctuated with a knock at the door, and we see that this entire performance was actually just practice because Jimmi-Sue is only just now arriving to the motel room. When she sneaks inside, we're actually seeing the same actress, Lana Turner, but as a different character, Cora Smith, from a different film than the previous scene. This time, it's Tay Garnett's 1946 adaptation of James M. Cain's The Postman Always Rings Twice, a story we've already essentially recapped with our review of Bob Rafelson's 1981 readaptation of the same novel. Jimmi-Sue is curious of Rigby's plans here at the motel.
What are we going to do?
Kinsey from cover to cover.
She quickly agrees to Rigby's supermarket swindle plans and follows her affirmative response by pronouncing her undying love for Rigby, who reciprocates with words, but a sting on the soundtrack accompanies a camera tilt to reveal that he was crossing his fingers behind her back when he said he loved her. Somehow, Jimmi-Sue's father has caught wind of their reunion and threatens Rigby away from her, so Rigby asks her for advice charming the man. She answers in more footage from the earlier Lana Turner title, Johnnie Aysgarth.
You never had a dog when he was a boy.
Never had a dog, huh?
The next day, Rigby shows up to her father, Mr. Altfeld's office, puppy named Ramon in hand, but it does nothing to thaw the man's frozen exterior. He confusingly refers to Rigby as a thief, and Rigby twists the line to imply the man feels his daughter is being stolen from him. When Rigby's given up on winning the man over, he turns to leave with the gift puppy still in his possession, but Mr. Altfeld spots something Rigby left behind.
Wait! Pick that up.
But it's all soft and steamy.
Pick that up!
He assures Altfeld that in the wake of their aborted deliberations, he will continue seeing Jimmi-Sue whether he likes it or not. On the way out of Altfeld's office, he passes between two secretaries' desks. He hands the younger woman the puppy as a gift, and the older woman gets a napkin wrapped around the soft and steamy mess from Altfeld's office floor.
Oh, thank you.
The woman barely gets the second gift unwrapped before Rigby's left the room. Watching Johnnie Aysgarth in preparation, I was excited to see it was produced by John W. Considine Jr., the father of MacGyver writer/actor John Considine, who we've also seen in California Split and When Time Ran Out, and his brother, Tim Considine, aka Mike Douglas from My Three Sons. Johnnie Aysgarth also features beloved Xanadu location, the Pan Pacific Auditorium, playing a dog track. The story follows Robert Taylor as the cold-hearted titular gangster Johnnie Aysgarth, who catches the eye of Lisbeth Bard, played by Lana Turner, coincidentally the stepdaughter of John Benson Farrell, the DA who once put him behind bars. The puppy scene, which didn't originally feature a puppy, is Farrell ordering Johnny to keep his distance from his daughter Elizabeth because he doesn't want her cavorting with a convicted thief, hence the thief line. One night, Johnny stages an altercation with a friend to convince Lisbeth that she's killed a man to protect Johnny, and then Johnny promises her DA stepdad that he won't turn her in if Farrell turns a blind eye to Johnny's new illegal gambling ring. When Farrell says, "Wait, pick that up," he's actually referring to money on the floor that Farrell tossed at Johnny to pay him out of Lisbeth's life, and Johnny reluctantly collects it on his way out. In the film, Eager himself is the one who was denied a dog as a boy, not Lisbeth's father, but by the end, it's all a she's all that story, and his heart warms to the girl and he admits to the whole truth. Other notes I made about this one: at one point in the film, Eager tells a woman,
"You're not exactly Juliet," which
is the name of the love interest in this film. The film's dialogue also regularly compares the sensual romantic relationship to a Cyrano/Roxanne dynamic, and Steve Martin would later star as Cyrano opposite Daryl Hannah in the 1987 adaptation Roxanne. In the downstairs lobby of the building, Rigby is abducted by a trio of men who he repeatedly compares to the Three Stooges. They drag him to the office of a crime boss played by a clip of Kirk Douglas as Noel Dink Turner in Byron Haskin's 1947 film I Walk Alone, co-starring Burt Lancaster as ex-con Frankie Madison. The film tells the story of Madison's release from prison, his reunion with his partner in crime Dink Turner, and his difficulty adjusting to the years he's missed. In today's film, when one of the goons points a revolver in Rigby's face, he hangs his hat on the muzzle and then gives another of them the standard stooge treatment, tricking him into looking at his shirt and then slapping him around while making silly mouth sounds, yanking his coat down to restrain his arms, snapping his suspenders, and even pulling down his fly. Dink Turner is less than amused and leads Rigby to my second favorite line in the film.
"I'm gonna have some sense beaten into you."
What's he paying you, boys? I'll double it and we'll beat the shit out of him.
The men knock Rigby out and drag him by his nostrils to a neighboring alley where they beat him to a pulp and dump him in a garbage can. Sometime later, Juliet somehow happens on the same alley looking for him, and when she calls his name, the trash can is jostled from within. She tries to take a peek inside and a fist comes rocketing up, punching her lights out. Another quick jump forward in time, and when Rigby escapes the garbage can, he notices the client he blindly knocked unconscious.
Juliet, those dirty bastards, beating up a woman.
I even knocked your breasts out of whack.
He goes to readjust them for her again, and she slowly wakes up. When she sees his bloodied face, she implores him to drop her case, but Rigby assumes she's just jealous of the blondes he's been auditioning for the Walter Neff honeypot. Rigby lights his own cigarette and then flips it in his mouth to light the opposite end. Then he tears it in two to offer the second piece to Juliet. This is just like a cool debonair spy moment. This isn't a comedy bit. This is just a neat thing that he's able to do.
But I thought it was a comedy bit. Because I thought he lit the cigarette and put it in his mouth, and then he turns it around. It's like, oh, he lit the wrong end.
Yeah,
yeah. But I think I don't think they had filtered cigarettes.
Right. Yeah. No. So it's definitely on purpose. Having given up hope of finding a suitable blonde for the scheme, Rigby is down to his last resort.
I decided to get the information myself.
How?
By disguising myself as a beautiful blonde.
We get a quick montage of Rigby's transformation, shaving his legs, clipping on garters, and donning earrings and makeup. When he steps out for the full reveal, he doesn't even try to adjust his body language at all.
Do I look like a dame?
Not as much as I do.
Rigby finally lets slip the reason he won't involve Juliet in this operation. He can't stand the thought of Mr. Neff feeling her up. She's flattered by his jealousy. He sprays on a bit of perfume and says his goodbyes. If I'm half the woman I think I am, I'll have a date with Walter Neff by tonight. We cut to Jerry's Market on Melrose and then inside the store using footage from another Billy Wilder film, 1944's Double Indemnity, the second included adaptation of a James M. Cain story, again costumed by Head and scored by Roja.
Yeah, this is one of the, I recognize this right away.
Yeah, this one and The Big Sleep are the two that I've watched the most out of all of these. With the help of a perfume called Fondle Me, Rigby quickly captures Neff's attention, and when he invites her up to his place, Rigby is quick to accept. We see them in the apartment doing lots of making out, but whenever we see Rigby's face over Neff's shoulder, he looks disgusted by what he's having to do here.
Perfume when you're here. What's the name of it?
Fondle me. Silly. That's the name of the perfume.
Blonde Rigby offers to make them drinks to get a break from the man, and drops a pill in Neff's cup to knock him out before he takes things too far.
Hoped it would take effect before he tried to pick my lock.
Moments later, we see Rigby crawling out from under the unconscious Neff on the couch and scouring the apartment for clues. He picks the lock of a cabinet and retrieves a tin box containing a passenger list of the last voyage of the Immer Essen.
It was exactly the same as the Carlotta enemies list.
Again, a random name rings a bell for Rigby, the ship's captain, Cody Jarrett. and it should ring a bell for you guys too. Do you guys recall the last time we heard the name Cody Jarrett on the podcast?
No.
Think of movies where people talk about old movies.
Oh, is it Fade to Black?
That's right.
Ah, nice.
You're so smart, Stella. Tell me what James Cagney's name was in White Heat.
I don't know, and I don't give a damn.
Arthur Cody Jarrett. That's who.
Which, of course, means that we're now jumping into footage from Raoul Walsh's 1949 film White Heat, starring James Cagney as Arthur Cody Jarrett, leader of the criminal outfit, the Jarrett Gang. In the original film, Jarrett pleads guilty to a low-level crime to get a minimal sentence in prison, but what he doesn't know is that his cellmate, Hank Fallon, played by Edmund O'Brien again, is an undercover cop planted here to slowly earn Jarrett's trust. Upon their release, Fallon is made a full partner in the gang until he's finally outed, leading to an epic shootout at a chemical plant. When Jarrett is cornered atop a massive gas tank, the surrounding cops fire on him indiscriminately, and we've actually already seen this character's death scene edited back and forth with Eric Binford's death scene at the end of 1980's Fade to Black.
Made it, Mom! I finally made it, Mom! Top of the world!
In today's film, Rigby reads headlines from around the same time Jarrett was imprisoned for an undisclosed crime, and we see that Jarrett had claimed he was framed for knowing too much. He refuses to divulge whatever he knew to anyone but his mother. Rigby goes to speak with Jarrett during visiting hours at a local prison, still in drag. When Juliet drops Rigby off outside the jail, she's suddenly worried.
Rigby, wait!
Don't call me Rigby.
I'm worried about you. Ever since you were beaten up, I've had nightmares about something awful happening to you.
He does his best to calm her nerves by admitting he too sees a future for them.
Hanging up my gun for good. Becoming a one-woman guy. Settling down on an ivy-covered cottage. Raking the autumn leaves out of the backyard. Squeezing orange juice for you in the morning.
You'd do that for me?
But first, he sees her off with a passionate smooch that confuses all the jail guards who still think this is Jarrett's mother visiting. During visitation, Rigby admits right away who he is to Jarrett, and further, that as an enemy of Carlotta, his life is in danger even in prison. A recent accident he suffered in prison was no accident. Rigby needs Jarrett to convince the guards that he's Mrs. Jarrett and feeds him lines from the 1949 film.
Say something like, no, Ma, look, listen to me.
No, Ma, look, listen to me.
It's good. Real good.
The original scene plays largely the same way, except that it's actually Jarrett's mother, and she informs him that members of his gang are making power grabs in his absence, but she plans to put a stop to it herself.
No one does what he's done to you, son, and gets away with it.
No, Ma, look, listen to me. You won't have a chance.
I'm going after him, Cody.
From here, the story of today's film takes a bizarre left turn when Rigby gets permission from the warden to pose as a fellow prisoner to protect Jarrett and learn the man's secret, which he never does. There's no reason that he did this. And it doesn't lead to anything. But also, why did he have to go in drag if it wasn't to trick Jarrett, and he has an inn at the prison that will literally allow him to go in undercover as another prisoner? But as soon as he's inside, Rigby is invited with Jarrett and friends to break out the same night. Why any of this? Who knows? Turns out Jarrett still isn't a fan of Rigby's and forces him at gunpoint into the trunk of a car for the escape. Hours later, Rigby pleads with Jarrett to release him.
How you doing, Parker?
I can't breathe.
Oh. Stuffy, huh? I'll give it a layer.
Thanks.
And Jarrett pulls out a gun to shoot a few holes in the car. And we jump cut to the next bullet between Juliet's teeth again. They make out passionately in Rigby's office.
Her lips were warm, and my arm wasn't the only thing that was throbbing. Our hearts were, too.
In his monologue, he lays out plans to seal the deal with her tonight, but they're interrupted.
My plan was working fine until...
You stuck your finger in my bullet hole.
Sorry, Rigby.
I'll be all right.
She offers to pop down to the drugstore to get supplies to treat his injuries. While she's out, Rigby gets a call from Margaret Croydon. And when we see the other side of the call, Margaret is being played by Joan Crawford, originally portraying the character of Helen Wright in Jean Negulesco's 1946 film Humoresque, about a high society woman played by Joan Crawford who falls for John Garfield as Paul Bourret, an up-and-coming violinist from the wrong side of the tracks. In the context of today's film, Rigby treats her like a clingy ex, and he has to shout her off the phone because he's finally found true love himself. Juliet returns and discreetly listens in on the conversation at the most inopportune moment possible.
A few days ago, I said something to a woman I thought I'd never say. I actually said...
And Juliet starts listening here.
I want to settle down in an ivy-covered cottage with you. Rake the autumn leaves out of the backyard. Squeeze orange juice for you in the morning.
I spoke to Victor. You give me the divorce. I tell you what you do. You come down tomorrow, we'll drive back to town together.
Rigby responds with ill-timed sarcasm.
Wonderful. I can't wait to come bouncing back into your life again.
But she hangs up just before hearing his final words.
No dice, Margaret. Call me in another 12 years.
All right, darling.
I do like that she's so quick to accept that. Like, all right, 12, I'll put it on the calendar. Juliet is understandably devastated by the apparent betrayal and runs back downstairs to a nearby phone booth. She calls the office sobbing and asks to close her case with the detective agency. Rigby is blindsided and assumes she's speaking under duress, but she hangs up. Sometime later, we see him drinking and struggling to make sense of her departure.
Finally, I arrived at a very important conclusion. Shit on her.
He offers a shot of liquor to an uninterested bird on his shoulder. His phone rings again, and it's Bogart, but not Phillip Marlowe Bogart or Dixon Steele Bogart. This time, it's Vincent Perry Bogart from Delmer Dave's 1947 film Dark Passage. He introduces himself on the call as Alan, a pseudonym Vincent adopts over the course of the original film. Inadvisably following in the footsteps of another Phillip Marlowe feature, Lady in the Lake, the first third of Dark Passage is shot from Bogart's first-person perspective, rendering nearly every shot aggressively uninteresting. Everyone's talking directly into camera, there's nothing interestingly framed anywhere, and the shots are super long and boring. It tells the story of Vincent Perry, played by Bogart, an escaped convict falsely accused of his wife's murder and on a mission to clear his name. 35 minutes in, he's introduced to a back-alley plastic surgeon who transforms his face, implying that until now, he's looked like someone else and he's just been gifted Bogart's face moving forward, and a new name, Alan Linnell. Do you guys recall the last time we saw someone getting plastic surgery to look exactly like Humphrey Bogart?
Go ahead, Richard.
Oh, was it the man with Bogart's face?
That's right. And back when we reviewed that film for 1980, we were confused why it seemed like the surgery that opens the film is being performed in a private residence, and it turns out it was an explicit reference to this exact scene from Dark Passage. His bandages are arranged the same way on his face and everything. In today's film, Rigby is momentarily confused by the fake name.
Juliet?
This is Alan.
Alan. Come on, Marlowe, no games.
I never could fool you, could I?
Rigby laments that he's hit a dead end on the Carlotta case, and Marlowe suggests he consult a map of the Peruvian coastline.
There's a little town on the coast called Payatin. Tell me where it is.
It's right next to a tiny little island called... You son of a gun. Carlotta. Damn, it's not a woman's name. It's a place.
He tells Marlowe he's headed there straight away. In the original film, Bogart, aka Vincent, aka Alan, is speaking with Lauren Bacall as Irene Jansen and inviting her to meet him at a charming cafe in Paita, Peru if he manages to survive the day. It's basically like the end of Shawshank, where he's like, tell you a place where you can find me if you want to find me. We cut to the last source of recycled footage the film has to offer from Robert Z. Leonard's 1949 film The Bribe, again composed by this film's composer Miklos Rozsa. In the original film, Robert Johnny Eager Taylor stars again, this time as Rigby, from whom Steve Martin's character takes his given name, a federal agent following stolen plane parts to South America and falling in love with Ava Gardner as Elizabeth Hinton, the wife of his prime suspect, Tug Hinton. The true villains of the story are ultimately revealed to be a man named Carwood, played by Vincent Price, and his obese associate, J.J. Beeler, played by Charles Lawton. As Rigby arrives to the island of Carlotta, which also comes from The Bribe, he comes as close as he will to explaining the title.
When I arrived in Carlotta, I thought of the words Marlowe had said to me over 15 years ago. Dead men don't wear plaid. Huh. Dead men don't wear plaid. I still don't know what it means.
Rigby meanders through the crowded cafe where Marlowe suggested he begin his search.
Carlotta was the kind of town where they spelled trouble T-R-U-B-I-L, and if you try to correct them, they kill you.
A band begins to play, and Ava Gardner appears again as nightclub singer Kitty Collins, though this footage is from The Bribe, and not our previous Gardner film, The Killers, in which she actually plays a Kitty Collins. Rigby is visited at his table by a cop who he first addresses by the wrong name, or perhaps the implication is that he's changed it for safety's sake. I don't know if he's being racist in getting this guy's name wrong or what.
Manuel Alessandro.
Not quite. Carlos Rodriguez.
Carlos Rodriguez.
See, before the war, we ran guns to the rebels.
Carlos advises Rigby to touch base with a dangerous man named Rice, who Kitty is in love with.
Where are you staying?
Hotel Guano.
Guano, of course, being the word for bat poop.
Is this a joke?
Sure.
They
never translated in the dialogue, so you'd have to just know that guano meant bat poop and that's funny.
I did, but it seemed irrelevant.
I would also buy that that's the name of a Peruvian hotel. Things are named weird things in different places. I don't know. Rigby tosses a coin on stage to get Kitty's attention, and the next afternoon he's approached by Charles Laughton, credited in today's film as the fat one who sweats a lot.
The next day, I hooked a big fish. The fat one who sweats a lot.
Laughton is quick to offer Rigby a bribe of $10,000 to leave town now, no questions asked.
You know who I could be?
Hunchback of Notre Dame?
I could be the guy who hands you them $10,000.
Laughton had, of course, previously appeared as the Hunchback in William Dieterle's 1939 adaptation of the Hunchback story. Rigby tells him to shove the bribe and says that if somebody has a problem with that, they can see him at room 204 tonight. Kitty confronts him there, and he judges her for pairing up with a killer like Rice. Just then, Carlos calls Rigby's room to inform him that a plane load of Germans have just landed in town, and Rice was there at the airport to greet them. He also saw an envelope change hands labeled Final Instructions. Carlos admits he was hired to escort Kitty and Rice onto the plane with the envelope. The call is cut short when someone clips the phone line, but everything's already been said. You should have cut it a second ago, or a minute ago maybe. Kitty hands Rigby another drink, and he stupidly slurps it down despite how often he's already been drugged in this film. He tries to interrogate her, but loses control of his mouth impossibly fast.
What do you know about a plane that's arrived with a bunch of Germans on it? Germans. There's a plane with Germans on it. The plane's in town. Ethel Merman came in. Wanna go see Ethel Merman with me?
Do you guys recall the last time we saw Ethel Merman and a person being heavily sedated? What do you got?
Airplane.
That's right.
You'll be swell. You'll be great. Gonna have the whole world on a plate. Starting here, starting now. Honey, everything's coming up right.
Rigby awakens in a bed with Vincent Price's Rice standing over him, ready to suffocate him with a pillow. Rigby manages to snag Rice's revolver and scares the man off with a shot. He promises Rice won't escape this place with the secret envelope. Rice flicks off the lights and escapes out onto the street through a crowded festival in full swing. Rigby races after him, but Carlos interrupts, insisting that Rigby shouldn't be running in pajamas and needlessly slowing him down, offering to help him remove them.
I don't need help with my pajamas! Oh, now, see?
Rigby, Carlos, and Rice push aggressively through the dense crowd, and production did an excellent job matching the fireworks from the film because the editing here is completely seamless. Like, I can't tell what's old and what's new for most of it.
Yeah, it was really well done. And the chaos of like the closely packed fireworks going off
It's
everywhere.
really great.
See, don't worry about your pajamas, senor! I'll take care of them!
Rice fires his weapon back at them, hitting Carlos, but the man insists it's just a bullet and his wife can suck it out later.
And don't worry about your pajamas! I'll take care of them!
In the midst of an epic fireworks show, Rice and Rigby trade a few more shots, and Rice takes a bullet in the gut and collapses down a flight of stairs glowing with sparklers.
Man, this dummy, I can only assume it's a dummy.
I thought it was a person.
Because they hit their head so goddamn hard
On the step,
on
yeah.
that step. I was like, oh, I hope that was a dummy and not a stunt person, because that was hard hitting.
Yeah, it looks rough. Rigby searches the body for the final instructions envelope, which is dated August 14th, 1946, which was actually actor Steve Martin's first birthday. He was born August 14th, 1945. Rigby flips through the envelope's contents, replete with Nazi insignia, and comes to some sort of conclusion about the Nazi plan. He continues down the road to Rasmussen Place, and peeking inside the warehouse is shocked by what he sees.
The last thing I expected to see was Juliet and her father, alive, talking with their butler, who was dressed in a Nazi uniform.
Rigby busts into the building and slides down a platform before pulling his gun on the Nazi officers and ordering their hands in the air. Then he makes them hold hands and smile. He points the gun at Juliet, and she insists she hasn't betrayed him, but her former butler, played by Carl Reiner, reveals now that he's actually Nazi officer Field Marshal Wilfred VonKluck.
Pretending to be a butler, rating on inferior races was galling to me.
Rigby starts quoting the man's final instructions document to the room and calls out their whole plan. The other Nazis in the room are all from Hitler's high command with the goal of getting the band back together. Now the script gets even dumber than it already was. It turns out Mr. Forrest accidentally invented a cheese mold strong enough to destroy the world. So naturally, the Nazis plan to wield it as a weapon. Rigby is so excited to spell out the plan he's uncovered, and VonKluck is excited to monologue the brilliance of his plan, so they wind up reciting the entire plan in unison.
It's also customary for the private eye to tell how he figured it out.
No, it is my right. We were able to dupe Dr. Forrest by posing as a humanitarian organization who planned to wipe out hunger by aging cheese faster.
But when your father finally saw what they were doing,
he started to assemble lists of our agents.
And seemed about to go to the FBI.
So we were obliged to kidnap him, drug him, and bring him here.
First, faking his death so there'd be no investigation.
But while testing the mold on a small island nearby,
the cruise ship Emerson passed by. Some of the passengers saw the tiny island dissolve.
They were therefore labeled enemies because of what they had seen. We had Walter Neff cancel all further tours, and our friends systematically began to eliminate everyone who was on that cruise ship. Schweinhund.
Jerk.
A clear reference to their previous collaboration on 1979's The Jerk. VonKluck already has levers ready to go to deploy the deadly cheese mold, and Rigby is surprised from behind by more officers who disarm and handcuff the detective. Juliet takes the opportunity to pretend to switch sides again, flirting with VonKluck and offering herself to serve in his New World Order.
I be your Heinemarkerfrau?
Yeah, you could be that.
Is that? What is it?
Tell him what it means. Heinemarkerfrau.
Heinemarkerfrau. It means she could be my cleaning woman.
Cleaning woman!
Rigby goes dark again and tears his cuffs off with ease before knocking VonKluck back to the ground and wrestling back his weapon to take the Nazi officers hostage again.
There was only 6 bullets in that gun. There are 9 of us. Thus, at least 3 will survive to throw those switches.
Okay, but who's going to win the lottery? And who's going to lose?
When VonKluck realizes his men won't follow through for him, he tries to flip the switches himself and takes a shot in the chest. Before he dies, he manages to briefly deploy the mold in a single territory before succumbing to his gunshot.
At least we got Terre Haute, India.
Damn. They were just about to get a public library.
Carlos and his deputies arrive to arrest the remaining Nazi hostages, and Rigby announces a plan to leave town on the very next plane.
Aha, that gives me 4 hours to wash and press your pajamas.
No thanks, Carlos. I don't think I'll be needing my pajamas anymore.
He tosses his hat over a swastika ornament and leans in to kiss Juliet passionately. Suddenly, he recoils from her.
What are you doing?
Adjusting your willy. When it fell through the window, it shifted out of whack.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Rigby's closing internal monologue jokingly hints at a potential sequel adventure.
Little did I realize that less than a year later, she and I would have an even more exciting adventure, which is coming soon to your neighborhood theater, with a possible nude scene by Juliet.
The closing credits present character cards for each of the famous actors from older movies and specifying which films the scenes were borrowed from, but like I mentioned, the car crash from Keeper of the Flame is left out, probably because the footage included didn't use any actors. A final card memorializes the late great Edith Head, who passed away a mere 2 weeks after wrapping her work on this film. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid was Edith Head's final film. To her, and to all the brilliant technical and creative people who worked on the films of the 1940s and 1950s, this motion picture is affectionately dedicated. The end. That's Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid.
That's a lot of story for not a lot of story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've already kind of telegraphed my opinions of this movie. It just not funny. Like, overall, I think it was an interesting experiment with taking all this old footage and trying to make, like, a story. It almost would have been more interesting if you made a movie out of completely footage from other movies and had far fewer scenes in which they were of just him in his office or him driving.
Yeah.
But overall, like, I got a couple of little laughs, but mostly it was just pretty boring.
What it reminded me of is you remember when Billy Crystal used to host the Oscars and they would do like a 4 or 5 minute like montage of him interacting with characters from all the Best Picture nominees. I feel like that worked better because it was like 8 seconds from each movie, and it was just like one, like a setup and a punchline, a setup and a punchline for every single scene. This doesn't even have the setups and punchlines. They're relying entirely on the gimmick. And they have entire scenes where they forget to put any jokes because the whole point is like, doesn't it look like he's sitting across from Cary Grant? And the closest thing to a joke we get is like, I have tuberculosis. Great.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to play a harmonica and you're going to look like you fall asleep, kind of. Yeah. I feel like it could have used a few more rounds of touch-ups on the comedy. And yeah, it's not super funny, but I do like the technical side of it. I also appreciate that they brought back people to light and score it to make it feel like it fit into that era, but it could have been a lot funnier.
And it's also unfortunate that the footage is so much grainier than the footage that's like that it's being paired with.
But that's why I want to go in and do my own private remaster of it, because there's Blu-rays of all 19 of these films now, or at least 720p releases, and it would be possible to clean up a lot of it. And even the audio is really, really bad. Like the Cary Grant scene specifically, his audio is so grainy, and Steve Martin's is so clear that the contrast doesn't even make sense.
Well, and because one also has the background noise of a train.
Right, yeah.
Like, I mean, so, Steve
they put the train over all of it, the background.
Right. But Steve Martin is being recorded separately.
Yeah.
It can be brought up. You can't.
Whereas they have to use the final mix for the Cary Grant audio, yeah. But yeah, that's that movie. What are we thinking thumbs on this one?
I think it's not the most entertaining thing, but it's novel enough that I give it a thumbs up. It's something to see.
I'm actually going to give it a thumbs up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving it a thumbs up. I mean, it's like you said, Pat, it's technical achievement is nice. The amount of footage that they had to scrub through is
just the thought that you had to put in to make a cohesive movie. I think is interesting.
Yeah.
I just wish it was funnier or more compelling of a story.
And the fact that they got The Man with Two Brains out in theaters the next year makes me think that they were kind of rushing a little bit.
Yeah.
That they were like, we can't spend too much time on this because it's literally a bunch of sound stages and editing in old footage. Like, it shouldn't take us that long to make this movie. And if they'd have spent a little bit more time in pre-production, just punching it up, just keep adding more jokes until you feel like it's almost too much, and then maybe back down a little bit. But here it really didn't feel like they were focused on the comedy.
I mean, I think they were up against a lot of difficulties that would be much easier to do today. So looking back at it, it's easy to say like it, just essentially they needed to edit this movie before they edited the movie, right?
Right, yeah.
They had to have the entire film planned out with all the bits of footage, dropped into where it would go within the script. And to do all that work physically with film is such a pain in the butt.
Right, yeah. It would be easier now just technologically, but also I feel like an editor now would have the advantage of so much nonlinear format programming that I think people have an easier time wrapping their heads around, oh, wouldn't it be funny if this line was over here and then he said this to this person? And people do so much like editing of their own materials to make things funnier online that I feel like nowadays people would have a much wider range of inspiration to draw from to make these bits funnier. But yeah, it's all right, but it could be a lot funnier than it is, especially with Carl Reiner and Steve Martin involved. You would expect it to be like, I didn't really laugh out loud in this movie, except maybe the case of the murdered girl with the big tits.
I think wowing us with the third act, with the fireworks scene, and even like, I was actually really impressed with the scale and size of the map in the Nazi compound.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's like a full relief map.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that, someone made that. Someone made like this like 40 square foot relief map of the United States.
They had to spend money on something.
Yeah. It was like a James Bond villain's lair.
Yeah, it did. It looked like Dr. Evil's place or something.
But it's a thumbs up.
Yeah. What are we thinking Letterboxd?
So I have it at, it's right around the middle. I have it at 37 out of 77. It is below Cat People and above Some Kind of Hero.
All right.
I have it at 32, which puts it below Porky's, but above Tag the Assassination Game.
I have it at 38, which is just above Wolf Lake and just under The Last Shark. The writer-director here was Carl Reiner. He plays Field Marshal VonKluck, obviously a staple of television comedy for decades, writing, directing, and performing. He had credits on The George Burns and Gracie Allen Show, The Dick Van Dyke Show, The Tim Conway Comedy Hour, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, and The Carol Burnett Show, to name a few. He wrote and directed feature films like The Comic. He directed Where's Papa? After this, he writes and directs The Man with Two Brains next season, and later Burt Rigby, You're a Fool. He directed but didn't write Oh God, The Jerk, All of Me, Summer Rental, Summer School, and Fatal Instinct. And his newest IMDb listing is a story credit on an episode of Seth MacFarlane's The Cleveland Show. That was Carl Reiner's last writing credit.
Interesting.
He was also a longtime friend of writer-director Mel Brooks, with whom he wrote and performed the beloved and long-running comedy sketch The 2,000-Year-Old Man on television, on stage, and on a successful series of comedy albums. Reiner also has acting credits in features The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, most of his own directed films, and we've heard him so far as the voice of God in History of the World Part 1. Carl Reiner's Nazi character Field Marshal VonKluck was based on Otto Preminger. It also reminded me in places of Erich von Stroheim's butler character Max von Meyerling from Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, I'm sure that was intentional.
Yeah. After this, he also makes appearances on Frasier, Mad About You, Duckman, The Larry Sanders Show, Slums of Beverly Hills, King of the Hill, Ally McBeal, Parks and Rec, Hot in Cleveland, Bob's Burgers, American Dad, Family Guy, Ocean's 11, 12, 13, and his last feature film acting credit was as Carl Reinerosaurus, one of 4 elderly closet toys in Toy Story 4, with frequent collaborators Mel Brooks as Melephant Brooks, Betty White as Bitey White, a tiger, and Carol Burnett as Cheryl Burnett, a chair. Couldn't have been Beryl Burnett or something? Why a chair? Reiner has said this is his favorite film from his filmography, and even though I enjoyed it, that seems impossible to me. He has so many great movies. Why would this be the number one?
I like Summer Rental better, better than this.
Another writer credit for George Gipe. This is his first screenwriting credit. Most of his writing work is actually on novelizations of titles we've covered, like Melvin and Howard and Resurrection. Later, he writes the novelizations of Gremlins, Back to the Future, and Explorers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's back next year to co-write The Man with Two Brains, and a little later for uncredited script revisions on Rodney Dangerfield vehicle Back to School. Sadly, at 53 years of age, his career was cut relatively short on September 6th, 1986, after suffering a bee sting to which he was deathly allergic. He died on arrival at the Verdugo Hills Medical Center in Glendale, California. 53 might not seem young until you consider that Mel Brooks was 8 years older than Gipe and is still announcing new upcoming projects some 40 years later. Another writer credit for Steve Martin, who plays Rigby Reardon in the film. This is only our second appearance by Martin after last season's Pennies from Heaven. Before these, Martin had appeared in Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, The Muppet Movie, and The Jerk, also for Reiner. He'd also made regular appearances on Saturday Night Live and the regular talk show circuit. He's back next season for The Man with Two Brains, also for Reiner, and All of Me, also for Reiner. Three Amigos, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Parenthood, LA Story, and many others. Most recently, he can be found on Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, which is starting, their 4th season now?
Sounds right.
The composer credit for Miklos Rozsa. He has credits dating back to the 30s. Standouts include The Fugitive, The Thief of Baghdad, Double Indemnity, Lost Weekend, The Killers, and The Bribe from this film, Lady on the Train, Spellbound, The Naked City, Adam's Rib, The Asphalt Jungle, Ivanhoe, Julius Caesar, Lust for Life, Ben-Hur, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, The Private Files of J. Edgar Hoover, Time After Time, and so far on the show Eye of the Needle. This was his last feature film composing credit. Cinematographer here was Michael Chapman. We've covered his first cinematography credit with The Last Detail, and after that he lights Taxi Driver, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Hardcore, The Wanderers, and for our 80s titles, Raging Bull and Personal Best. He returns next season to light the Reiner Martin comedy The Man with Two Brains, and later The Lost Boys, Michael Jackson's Bad music video, Scrooged, Ghostbusters 2, Quick Change.
Which music video was bad?
That one that's shitty. We all know it was shitty. I'm not gonna dignify it
Just
by
that
name.
bad one.
Yeah. Quick Change, Kindergarten Cop, Doc Holliday, Primal Fear, Space Jam, 6 Days, 7 Nights, Evolution, Eulogy, Hoot, and Bridge to Terabithia. The editor here was Bud Molan. He previously edited Where's Papa, Oh God, and The Jerk for director Reiner. So far on the show, he's cut They Call Me Mr. Tibbs and Up the Academy. Later, he cuts All of Me, and it hurt. No, the movie All of Me. The Man with One Red Shoe, Summer Rental, Police Academy 3, Back in Training, Summer School, Burt Rigby, You're a Fool, and Fatal Instinct. The wardrobe here was provided by Edith Head. In the course of her career, she amassed a whopping 35 costume design Oscar nominations, winning 8. She has credits reaching back to the mid-20s, including on the first Best Picture winner 1927's Wings, and later Road to Singapore, The Lady Eve, Here Comes Mr. Jordan, Sullivan's Travels, Holiday Inn, The Uninvited, Going My Way, Hail the Conquering Hero, The Great Gatsby, Samson and Delilah, No Man of Her Own, Sunset Boulevard, A Place in the Sun, Shane, Roman Holiday, White Christmas, The Trouble with Harry, The Court Jester, Funny Face, Gunfight at the OK Corral, Vertigo, The Black Orchid, Cinderfella, HUD, Inside Daisy Clover, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Airport, Colossus the Forbin Project, The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, Airport 1975, The Man Who Would Be King and Family Plot. So far on the show, she's credited in The Birds, Airport 77, The Sting, Earthquake, and Last Married Couple in America. From this film, she designed the costumes in The Glass Key, Double Indemnity, The Lost Weekend, and Sorry Wrong Number. This was her final feature film credit, and she passed away mere weeks after production wrapped, hence the film's closing dedication. Her legacy and likeness also famously inspired the character of superhero costume designer Edna Mode in Brad Bird's Incredibles films, voiced by director Bird himself. Rachel Ward played Juliet Forrest. We've seen her previously in Night School, and she was cast here on the strength of her part in Sharky's Machine, which we mentioned in our review of that film, was essentially a neo-noir remake of Otto Preminger's Laura. Later she appears in the Thornbirds miniseries, The Final Terror, Against All Odds, another classic noir remake of Jacques Tourneur's Out of the Past, and Fortress.
Yeah, I don't know if I had mentioned...
You did,
yeah, okay, I was going to say, like, I got to mention Fortress, because Fortress is great.
More recently, she provided a voice in the hybrid animated film Peter Rabbit as Peter's mother. Her husband, Brian Brown, voiced Peter's father. We've seen Brian now in Breaker Morant, Winter of Our Dreams, and a minisode review of Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith, and he co-stars with her in The Thornbirds. Alan Ladd played the Exterminator in archival footage. He has uncredited parts back to the 30s. He shows up in Citizen Kane. He has credits in 2 films that were recycled into this, namely This Gun for Hire, in which he plays the cookie-eating assassin Philip Raven, and The Glass Key. He's Jay Gatsby in the 49 Great Gatsby adaptation. He's Shane in Shane. His son, Alan Ladd Jr., was one of the most beloved executives in the history of 20th Century Fox, without whom the Star Wars and Alien franchises would likely never have come to be. Jr. departed Fox to found the Ladd Company, which would produce films we've covered in the 80s like Outland, Body Heat, Chariots of Fire, and Looker, as well as upcoming titles like Blade Runner, Night Shift, The Right Stuff, and The Big Chill. When the label was revived in the 90s, they produced Braveheart, the Brady movies, and then shut down shortly after the release of Ben Affleck's Gone Baby Gone. His granddaughter, Jordan Ladd, has made appearances in Eli Roth's Cabin Fever, Tarantino's Death Proof, David Lynch's Inland Empire, and Jay Chandrasekhar's Club Dread. Barbara Stanwyck played Leona Hastings-Forrest in the film. She's in The Furies, the 53 Titanic, and she even co-starred with Rachel Ward in 4 episodes of the Thornbirds miniseries, which could easily have been a very awkward experience. She won an honorary Oscar at the 54th Annual Academy Awards, which we covered last year, and in the course of her career, she collected 4 lead actress nominations for Stella Dallas, Ball of Fire, and her 2 titles edited into this film. Of course, she appears in Billy Wilder's Double Indemnity, in the role doubled by Rigby in a blonde wig, and crying into a phone throughout the clips from Sorry Wrong Number. Ray Milland played Sam Hastings. His first IMDb credit is an appearance in the 1928 Moulin Rouge. He is Freddy in the original Just a Gigolo. He's in the 1935 adaptation of Dashiell Hammett's The Glass Key, not the 42 version from this film. He's in the 39 Beau Guest, Sullivan's Travels, The Uninvited, and within this film he plays Don Burnham, the lead of Billy Wilder's The Lost Weekend, where he finds the cash in the sugar bowl lid, for which he won the 1946 Best Actor Oscar. Later, he's Tony Wendis in Dial M for Murder, Satan in King of Kings, Oliver Barrett III in Love Story, which at first glance I thought was the baby from Ghostbusters 2, but that's Oscar Barrett. And we've seen him so far on the show in Frogs and a minisode review of The Attic. So that is another person that we had covered before this.
Wasn't Barrett Oliver the name of the kid from Neverending Story?
Possibly.
Yes, it was.
It's definitely a reference to that then. Ava Gardner played Kitty Collins. Her earliest feature appearance on IMDb was 1941's Shadow of the Thin Man, which I brought up earlier for its Follow That Car moment. The film includes footage of her appearances as Kitty Collins in The Killers and Elizabeth Hinton in The Bribe. Later, she's in The Barefoot Contessa, The Night of the Iguana. She's Lily Langtry in The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, and we've seen her previously in Earthquake as Charlton Heston's insufferable wife and Van Johnson's wife, the second lady in The Kidnapping of the President. She was also nominated for Best Actress for her role in John Ford's Mogambo, 1953. Burt Lancaster played Swede Anderson. His Swede Anderson character in The Killers was actually his first film role, and he shows up in I Walk Alone and Sorry Wrong Number as well, but not from scenes used in this film. Later, he's in From Here to Eternity for a lead actor nomination. He's Wyatt Earp in Gunfight at the OK Corral, Lieutenant Bloodsoe in Run Silent, Run Deep, Elmer Gantry in Elmer Gantry for a Best Lead Actor Oscar, Dr. Janning or Yanning in Judgment at Nuremberg. He was the Birdman of Alcatraz in The Birdman of Alcatraz for another Best Lead nomination. He's in Airport. He's Valdez in Valdez is Coming. He's in Scorpio. He's Ned Buntline in Buffalo Bill and the Indians or Sitting Bull's History Lesson, which is funny because when we saw him as Bill Doolin in Cattle, Annie, and Little Britches, he was quite annoyed to learn that some guy named Ned Buntline had written all these pulp novels about the Doolin-Dalton gang.
I've read all about you fellas. Through Mr. Ned Buntline's literary works. I've followed all your deeds of daring do and bravery.
This is Ned Buntline. Now what the hell does he know about us?
Everything, Bill. Everything.
I would have found the joke more amusing if I'd realized Lancaster had previously played Buntline himself. We've also seen Lancaster in Louis Malle's Atlantic City, for which he earned his 4th lead actor nomination. Humphrey Bogart played Phillip Marlowe. He has credits back to the 20s, including roles in the 1931 Body and Soul. He's James Fraser in Angels with Dirty Faces, Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon, Rick Blaine in Casablanca for a lead actor nomination, Harry Morgan in To Have and Have Not, and within this film we see him as Marlowe from The Big Sleep, Vincent Perry in Dark Passage, and Dixon Steele in a Lonely Place. He's also in The Treasure of Sierra Madre, Key Largo, The African Queen for a lead actor Oscar, and The Caine Mutiny for another lead actor nomination. He met, fell in love with, and married Lauren Bacall during the production of Howard Hawks' To Have and Have Not. He was, of course, married at the time, in his mid-40s, and Bacall was 19. They would appear in 4 films together and remained married until his passing 12 years later of esophageal cancer. 4 years after that, she would remarry to actor Jason Robards, who was only 2 years her senior. Cary Grant played Johnnie Aysgarth. He shows up in Madame Butterfly. He's the voice of Mock Turtle in the 1933 Alice in Wonderland. He's in Bringing Up Baby, Gunga Din, His Girl Friday, The Philadelphia Story, and a pair of Hitchcock-directed turns within this film in Suspicion and Notorious. He's also in Arsenic and Old Lace, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, To Catch a Thief, An Affair to Remember, North by Northwest, and Charade. He received Best Lead Actor nominations for both Penny Serenade and None But the Lonely Heart, and in 1970 was awarded an honorary statue by the Academy. Ingrid Bergman plays F.X. Huberman. One of her earliest roles was in 1936's Intermezzo, which we've seen so far on the show in the form of its 1980 remake, Willie Nelson vehicle Honeysuckle Rose. You remember that was a remake? It's like the 3rd version, too. She's Ivy Peterson in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. She stars opposite Bogey as Ilsa Lund in Casablanca. She's in For Whom the Bell Tolls, Gaslight, and Spellbound. Her scenes in this film come from Hitchcock's Notorious. Later, she's Joan in Victor Fleming's 1948 Joan of Arc film. She's in Cactus Flower, The 74 Murder on the Orient Express, and we've seen her thus far as the titular Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler in The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. With 4 nominations, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Bells of St. Mary, Joan of Arc, and Autumn Sonata, and 3 Oscar wins for Gaslight, Anastasia, and Orient Express, she's one of the most decorated actresses in Oscar history, tied with Meryl Streep and Frances McDormand, and second only to Katharine Hepburn's 4 lead actress wins. But between you and me, there's no way McDormand doesn't at least tie Hepburn with all the time she has left. Veronica Lake played Monica Stillpond. She's the girl in Sullivan's Travels. From the films within this one, she shows up in This Gun for Hire and The Glass Key. Her final feature film credit was as Dr. Elaine Frederick in 1970's Flesh Feast, about a ring of Floridian Nazis working on a Frankenhitler.
Did you say Flesh Feast?
Flesh Feast.
Lovely.
Frankenhitler. Bette Davis played Doris Davermont. She has credits in Jezebel, The Letter, Now Voyager, Mr. Skeffington, and within this film in Deception. Later, she's in All About Eve, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Bunny O'Hare, and we've seen her on the show so far in Burnt Offerings and Watcher in the Woods. She's also in Return to Witch Mountain and the 78 Death on the Nile. She has nominations from Of Human Bondage, Dark Victory, The Letter, The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, Skeffington, All About Eve, The Star, and Baby Jane, and 2 wins for Dangerous and Jezebel. Lana Turner played Jimmi-Sue Altfeld. She has roles in Ziegfeld Girl, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and within this film in Johnny Eager and The Postman Always Rings Twice. She's in Peyton Place for a lead actress nomination, and we saw her last on the show for Witch's Brew. She's the one trying to trade bodies with Terry Garr. Edward Arnold played Altfeld. He has credits back to the 19-teens. He was one of Moriarty's henchmen in a 1916 Sherlock film. Later, he's in Whistling in the Dark, I'm No Angel, The 35, Glass Key, You Can't Take It With You, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and in this film, he appears in clips from Johnny Eager, and later he's in Ziegfeld Follies and Annie Get Your Gun. What?
I was going to go whistling.
You can't help but do that.
Dark.
Anytime I read that title or the title for the movie They Might Be Giants or the title for the movie The Long, Long Trailer, I start going into They Might Be Giants lyrics. Kirk Douglas played a thug boss. His clips in this come from I Walk Alone. Later he's in A Letter to Three Wives, The Glass Menagerie, Detective Story, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Ulysses, Lust for Life. He's Doc Holliday in Gunfight at the OK Corral, alongside his I Walk Alone co-star Lancaster as Wyatt, with costumes from Edith Head. He's in Kubrick's Paths of Glory and Kubrick's Spartacus, and later There Was a Crooked Man, The Light at the Edge of the World, and we've seen him so far in The Fury, Home Movies, Saturn III, and The Final Countdown. My favorite Spartacus story is that the screenwriter was blacklisted, and they were trying to decide if they would credit him or how that would go, and Kubrick's like, I'll just take the credit, and then Kirk Douglas is like, I'll punch you in the face. They were like, never mind.
Well, that was Preminger, right?
No, Kubrick directed.
No, but who was the screenwriter then?
I thought it was the same guy who did Johnny Got His Gun, Dalton Trumbo.
It was Trumbo.
It's funny, though, because Kubrick did the same thing on 2001 A Space Odyssey, where he's like, well, there's too many visual effects artists, and I can't credit them all. I can only credit 3, so instead I'm just going to put my name in and win the Oscar for the 3 of you. Kirk Douglas is back soon for The Man from Snowy River, Eddie Macon's Run, Tough Guys, Oscar. He voices Chester J. Lampwick on The Simpsons. He stars alongside his son and grandson in 2003's It Runs in the Family. At the time of his passing during the first season of this podcast, he was the last surviving cast member from any of the film's archival footage. He is also, of course, famously the father of actor Michael Douglas. Kirk has Oscar nominations for Champion, The Bad and the Beautiful, and Lust for Life, and took home an honorary statue in 1996. We were also friends on MySpace. He accepted my friend request. It's a true story.
You and Tom.
I think he also died between us recording our review of Saturn III and posting it.
Oh.
So we had to put a disclaimer like, hey, we accused him of murdering people in this episode. That was just a joke. Fred MacMurray played Walter Neff. His first IMDb credit is for playing an extra in a 1929 film called Girls Gone Wild. Later, he's in the Texas Rangers. His clips in this come from Double Indemnity, and later he shows up in the Caine Mutiny with Bogey, The Shaggy Dog, The Oregon Trail, The Apartment, and he's the absent-minded professor in The Absent-Minded Professor and Son of Flubber. He's in Bon Voyage, 380 episodes of My Three Sons as the father of the aforementioned Mike Douglas character played by Tim Considine, not to be confused with the actual Mike Douglas, son of Kirk Douglas. His final credit was as Mayor Clarence Tuttle in Killer Bee movie The Swarm. James Cagney played Captain Cody Jarrett. He stars in The Public Enemy, The Millionaire, Footlight Parade, Mutiny on the Bounty, Frisco Kid, Angels with Dirty Faces, alongside Bogey, The Roaring Twenties, Yankee Doodle Dandy, and within this film as Cody Jarrett in White Heat. Later, he's in Mr. Roberts, 1, 2, 3. We saw him last as New York Police Commissioner Rhinelander Waldo in Milos Forman's Ragtime last season. He scored Oscar nominations for Angels with Dirty Faces and Love Me or Leave Me, and a win for Yankee Doodle Dandy. Joan Crawford played Margaret in archival footage. She appears in Grand Hotel, Love on the Run, The Women, Above Suspicion, Hollywood Canteen, Mildred Pierce, and in this film via clips from Humoresque. Later, she's in Johnny Guitar, Straight Jacket, and so far on the show for her final feature film role in Trog. She has 2 lead actress nominations for Possessed and Sudden Fear, and 2 wins for Mildred Pierce and Trog. Just kidding, she only has 1 win. We've even seen her on the show accepting the Mildred Oscar from her front porch, as portrayed by Faye Dunaway in Frank Perry's Mommy Dearest. Rainey Santoni played Carlos Rodriguez. He's Mac in Guns of the Magnificent Seven. Chico, Eastwood's new partner in Dirty Harry. He's Lieutenant Rivera in 8 episodes of Manimal. He's in Brewster's Millions, Summer Rental, also from director Reiner, Cobra, Rain Man, Private Parts. He was pizza chef Poppy in 4 Seinfeld episodes, and a cop in Can't Hardly Wait. Charles Lawton played the fat one who sweats a lot in archival footage. He was Sir Walter Porterhouse in The Old Dark House, Henry VIII in The Private Life of Henry VIII, Inspector Javert in the 35 Les Mis, Captain Bligh in Mutiny on the Bounty, Claudius in I, Claudius, Quasimodo in the 39 Hunchback movie, the Canterville Ghost in The Canterville Ghost, Captain Kidd in Captain Kidd, and his scenes in this come from The Bribe. He reprises the role of Captain Kidd for Abbott and Costello Meet Captain Kidd. He's King Herod in Salome and Gracchus in Spartacus. He was awarded nominations for Mutiny on the Bounty and Witness for the Prosecution, and an Oscar win for Henry VIII, but by far the greatest prize he ever won was Elsa Lanchester's hand in marriage. Quasimodo and the Bride of Frankenstein were wed in 1929 and remained married until his passing in 1962. Vincent Price played Rice. He shows up in Tower of London, Preminger's Laura. He's the Invisible Man in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. His clips in this come from The Bribe. Later, he's the lead in the original House of Wax, the original The Fly, and the original House on Haunted Hill, and the original I Am Legend, aka Omega Man, aka Last Man on Earth. He shows up again in Return of the Fly, The Tingler, House of Usher, Pit and the Pendulum, Diary of a Madman, The Mask of the Red Death. He's Dr. Goldfoot in Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine, The Wild Weird World of Dr. Goldfoot, and Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs. He was Egghead in 7 episodes of the Adam West Batman, Dr. Phibes in The Abominable Dr. Phibes, and Dr. Phibes Rises Again. He's in Madhouse and so far on the show in The Monster Club, and a deleted scene from Bustin' Loose. He narrates Tim Burton's short animated film Vincent. Later, he's in House of the Long Shadows. He narrates Michael Jackson's Thriller video, which is not the bad one. He voices Vincent Van Ghoul in 13 episodes of The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. He's Professor Ratigan in The Great Mouse Detective. He's Arthur Loudermilk in Dead Heat, and one of his final performances was as the inventor in Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands, who created Edward. George Gaines played Dr. Forrest. He has credits in The Way We Were, Bogdanovich's Nickelodeon. We've seen him previously in Altered States, but he's likely best known for his 111 episodes of General Hospital as Frank Smith, if not as Henry in 88 episodes of Punky Brewster, or as Lassard in the Police Academy films, alongside one of the stars of next week's film. He's also credited as Professor in Roger Corman's Fantastic Four film, but presumably that doesn't mean Professor X. I'm hoping he's just a professor.
Did you say To Be or Not to Be?
Oh, I didn't. Oh, see you in that?
Well, yeah, which is funny because that has Mel Brooks connection.
There you go.
So.
He also shows up in an episode of Sliders as a much older version of Jerry O'Connell's Quinn character. Francis X. McCarthy played Waiter. He also shows up in Altered States as Obispo. We've seen him since then in Cutter's Way, Zoot Suit, and alongside Steve Martin as the bartender in Pennies from Heaven. Later, he's one of Lonigan's thugs in The Sting 2. He reunites with Martin and Reiner for The Man with Two Brains. He's in Summer Rental and Summer School for Reiner, Action Jackson, Death Spa. He was Griffin, an FDA agent bribed to ignore the dangers of GC-161 in The Secret World of Alex Mack.
Yeah.
Arguably a main villain of the series. He's also Boots in Interstellar, whoever that is. I think it's just a guy that works on the farm.
Could have been one of the...
I think he's the guy who calls in and says, like, hey, all the tractors are going fucking crazy. You need to get back here. Adrienne Ricard played Mildred. She comes back as a nurse in The Man with Two Brains. William Conrad played Swede's killer. He's credited as Mac in The Killers. He's Guillaume Erard, the prosecutor in Victor Fleming's Joan of Arc. He also has a handful of voice acting credits for narrating 0 Hour, the film remade as 1980's Airplane. He narrates the best of Peabody and Sherman, The Dudley Do-Right Show, Go-Wrath, The Bullwinkle Show, 120 episodes of the Fugitive series, Chisholm, Gunsmoke, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, The Tarzan Lone Ranger Zorro Hour, Manimal, and Hudson Hawk. And he appears as the Fat Man in 103 episodes of Jake and the Fat Man.
Yeah, he just does a quick bit at the beginning and the end as a button for Hudson Hawk.
Charles McGraw played another of Swede's killers. He's credited as Al in The Killers. He plays Rick Blaine in 9 episodes of the Casablanca TV series. He played the Falcon in 39 episodes of The Adventures of the Falcon. He's Marcellus in Spartacus. He's in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, In Cold Blood, Hang 'em High, Johnny Got His Gun, and A Boy and His Dog. We saw him last as Sebastian Scholes in Hitchcock's The Birds. Jeff Corey played Kitty's nightclub companion. He's uncredited as a crypt keeper in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, a reporter in Miracle on 34th Street. He's in Joan of Arc, The Boston Strangler. He's Tom Chaney in the original True Grit, Sheriff Bledsoe in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He's Casbah in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and so far on the show as Captain Martin in They Call Me Mr. Tibbs, Zed in Battle Beyond the Stars, and Krakus in The Sword and the Sorcerer. Later, he's the Grand Vizier in Conan the Destroyer. Brian Donlevy played Dinner Party Guest. He's one of the names we hear in Fade to Black, too. Brian Donlevy on the way to Richard Widmark. He has credits in Union Pacific, Bo Guest for a Best Supporting nomination, Destry Rides Again, Billy the Kid, Wake Island. The film includes his performance in The Glass Key, and later he's in Kiss of Death and The Quatermass Experiment. Norma Varden played another Dinner Party Guest. She appears in The Road to Zanzibar. Her part here is from The Glass Key. She's in Casablanca, The White Cliffs of Dover, National Velvet, Strangers on a Train, The 52 Les Mis. She's Frau Schmidt in Sound of Music, and Lady Featherington in Dr. Dolittle. Edmund O'Brien played Hank Fallon, aka Vic Pardo. His first feature credit is alongside Charles Laughton in The 39 Hunchback. His scenes in this are from The Killers and White Heat. Later he's in DOA, Greatest Show on Earth, Julius Caesar, The Barefoot Contessa for an Oscar win, 1984, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, Birdman of Alcatraz, 7 Days in May for a nomination, The Wild Bunch, 99 and 44 100% Dead, and his final credit was in Orson Welles' The Other Side of the Wind in 2018 for Netflix, because it took a while to come out.
Yeah.
And the last name here is Cheryl Smith, who plays Veronica Lake from behind when they're shooting over her shoulder. She has credits in Caged Heat, The Swinging Cheerleaders, Phantom of the Paradise, Robert Mitchum's Marlowe title, Farewell My Lovely, The Pom Pom Girls with our friend Cooper Huckabee, Logan's Run, she's Cinderella in the 1977 Cinderella, The Model in The Incredible Melting Man, Kathy Farley in Laser Blast, and we've seen her so far on the show in Melvin and Howard, Nice Dreams, Vice Squad, and Parasite. She's back next season for her last credit in 1983's Independence Day. I think that's everything for Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. If you really like the show, maybe you should join our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast. What's that sound?
We got one!
That's right, it's a new patron, CK. As a $5 patron of the show, CK now has access to 64 full-size 70s reviews and a hand in choosing next month's film. Patrons are currently choosing between Apple Dumpling Gang, Beyond the Door, Bucktown, Bullet Train, Cleopatra Jones and the Casino of Gold, Crazy Mama, The Drowning Pool, One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing, Return to Macon County, Smile, The Swinging Barmaids, and White Line Fever for a 50th anniversary review next month. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Diner, which IMDb describes like so. A group of college-aged buddies struggle with their imminent passage into adulthood in 1959 Baltimore. We leave you now with the trailer for Diner.
There's a little place where people gather to enjoy the banquet of life.
I get a date with Carol Heathrow. She is dead.
It's the Diner. And what they really want most isn't on the menu.
Go on.
Eddie's giving Elise a football quiz. If she fails, the marriage is off.
And if she passes, it's 2 more days to the thing. Marriage. You're a virgin, aren't you? Technically. Come on.
You miserable creature.
It's a slice of life.
Did you turn into such a thing? Oh, look it.
With a touch of spice.
Better put that sheep down.
And a little love.
I was admiring your horse.
Where?
A few beers. A few tears. A few great years.
You happy with your marriage or what? Beth is terrific and everything, but always got the diner. Yeah, we always got the diner.
They were sharing good times that soon became old times.
My prayer. Flip side, Heaven on Earth, recorded by the Platters for Mercury Records, color of the label Maroon.
Nothing could be finer than eating at the diner.
He's like a building with feet.
Where friends show up, but mostly show off.
I'll hit you so hard I'll kill your whole family.
You guys really are sick, you know that?
That's because you got no sense of humor.
It's a place to stop before moving on. Diner. It's open all day and cooking all night.